Welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. If you enjoy our content, please like or subscribe.
Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you want to get a pergola. Maybe you want to get, during Christmas lights. Check out Chris Helms. He's a local guy from Waxahachie. He'll take care of you. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. So today, my very special guest is Mr. Kameron Raburn, who is running for Ellis County Judge. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic today. How are you doing, DV?
I'm doing good. I'm really grateful that you came on the show. Come on here and answer questions for the people of Ellis County. It's a big position you're running for. Like I tell every candidate, thank you for wanting to serve your community in this rough and tumble thing that's Ellis County politics.
Yes, sir. And just to get started, DV, let me begin by saying thank you very much for setting this up and for giving all of the candidates the opportunity to air on your show and to be able to come into the homes of all of those who are watching us over the internet and live streaming this. You're the only person I know of that's doing anything quite like this in the area. And so thank you very much for your professionalism and for the great job that you're doing by hosting this show for everyone.
I'm really grateful for the word, sir. I really appreciate it. It's a labor of love. And then we have a forum that's going to be airing next week. You're going to be part of that forum. Thank you for wanting to participate on that. It's a different format now. But the good thing about this one is you get to speak to the voters directly, and you got a little more time to elaborate.
Yes,
so I wanted to kind of give you a chance to kind of, an intro. Tell me about you.
All right. Yeah, definitely. So again, my name is Kameron Raburn. I'm running for Ellis County Judge. I'm a sixth generation Ellis County resident. I currently serve as mayor of the city of Ennis. All in, I have about 15 years of public service. I started off my public service serving as a volunteer fireman. Whenever I got my driver's license, one of the first things I did was I went and joined the volunteer fire department, volunteering for the Garrett Rural Volunteer Fire Department. I then went on, eventually became president of the Ellis County Firefighters Association. I attended high school at Waxahachie Global High School there in Waxahachie. And while attending school there, I managed to get my associate's degree before graduating from high school. And attending Global is what really got me interested in engineering. And ultimately, I went on to the University of Texas at Arlington, and that's where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, and then worked as an engineer in training for 4 years. Prior to doing that, I worked as a research assistant in Valencia, Spain at Polytechnic University. I did that for one summer. That was back in 2015. Then I went on to work at the same company that I currently work for in the transportation and infrastructure industry. I worked for as an engineer in training for 4 years, and then sat for the professional engineering exam and became a licensed professional engineer. And currently I do heavy highway design. And, I've loved every bit of it. Worked for the same company now for the past 10 years. And it's really been exciting. And I've loved doing it. I started getting into politics really at the most grassroots level possible. I started volunteering and working the elections. I worked as an election clerk. The very first time I worked as an election clerk out at the Bardwell, Texas election site. And we had a whopping total of 30 voters that came in that day. But all 30 of those votes were very important in that election. And it gave me an opportunity to spend some time there with some very nice individuals who kind of taught me how the election process works there at the local level. Then very soon after working that election, I get a call from the elections office and they said, "Hey, can you work again?" And so I said, sure. I came and I then worked as an election judge. I believe all in, I worked about 10 elections, worked as an election judge at multiple different sites. I started attending city council meetings, county commissioner court meetings, and, listening to the things that were happening in my community. And this was back in 2020 when COVID was in full swing and everyone really started to understand just how important the roles of local government are and how they can impact you. I started listening, and then I eventually, after I kind of started to gain more information about some of the topics that were being discussed, I would stand up in the meetings. I'd fill out one of those public comment cards and I'd start speaking. And I eventually said, you know what, I think I want to run for city council. In the city of Ennis, they refer to it as a city commission. And so I ran. I ended up running unopposed. And so I got sworn in as city commissioner, and I served for 2 years as a city commissioner, and then ultimately decided to run for mayor of the city of Ennis. And when I ran for mayor of the city of Ennis, it was really That was my first big election that I ever ran in. The countywide election is definitely a much larger election, but I'd worked on a number of local campaigns before running for mayor, and so it's really been the honor of a lifetime to be able to serve as mayor of the city of Ennis. I've gotten to do some really, really neat things, and even before serving as mayor of the city of Ennis, I've had the opportunity to not only serve at the local level, but also to be able to serve at the regional level. So I'm now serving in my third term on the North Central Texas Council of Governments on the board of directors. And at that level, we're able to set regional policy across the 16 county North Texas area. And it's really been a neat thing to be able to be a part of. I'm honored to be able to serve in the capacities that I have, and I'm ready to be able to take the next step and to serve all of the citizens of Ellis County and to continue to serve the citizens of the city of Ennis.
Cameron, I have to back up here because you said you went to Valencia, Spain.
Entiendo poquito español.
I had to know. I definitely plan on visiting that place soon, one day, soon when I retire. But, it sounds like you've done a lot, and being a mayor of Ennis, which is a very nice little town, you've gotten some experience. What really motivated you to run for judge? Because that's a big position, and there's a lot of things we're going to cover on it. But what motivated you to do that?
I'll be honest with you. It was not my idea. I have people all the time ask me, Cameron, what do you see in your future? Where are you going? What are you ultimately going to be one day? And I tell them all the time, guys, I will be perfectly content retiring one day as a licensed professional engineer who was once the mayor of the city of Ennis and had the ability to be able to serve the citizens here. And whenever we had this opportunity that came along, where there's no incumbent that's running for county judge, it was amazing how many people, well-respected people, numerous people across the county who came to me and said, Cameron, this is something that you need to strongly consider running to lead our county and to be our next county judge. You hold three very important qualities, and that is that you've served as the chief executive officer of a local municipal government. You have a professional background serving as a licensed professional engineer. You have that strong political background. You also have the strong business background, but kind of the third leg of the stool is that I've also been heavily involved with the Republican Party and been a conservative Republican for a number of years. I've attended two state Republican Party conventions. I was elected by the eastern half of the county chairs to serve as the Senatorial District 2 caucus chair for Ellis County. And, those are all very important things when you're considering who's going to lead our county into the future as the next chief elected official for the county.
And it is a lot of experience for a young age. What values guide you? I mean, is it your faith? What really guides you?
Well, my faith is definitely a big part of it. And like I said, to kind of go back and better answer the question you asked before, was, I was asked by a number of individuals to consider running for this position. And immediately my response to them was, no, you're crazy. I'm not interested in doing that. I want to continue to serve as mayor of the city of Ennis. But, when enough people ask you about that, you really feel that this is something that is a calling, and it's something that we prayed about, me as well as my wife. And, one day we woke up and my wife came to me and she said, Cameron, I think you need to do it. This is something that you need to do. This isn't something that happens every day. And, people typically aren't asked to take the next step like this. And so, we felt that it was a calling from a higher up and decided to ultimately to take the plunge. But yeah, I would say that, my number one guiding principle is my faith. We are weekly attenders of the First Methodist Church here in Ennis, Texas. And, our congregation, as well as our minister, provide a lot of inspiration and a lot of leadership and guiding principles to us.
Cameron, what's the proper role of government in your eyes?
The proper role of government, I think that the proper role of government in my eyes is to be as irrelevant to your daily life as possible, to be there to be able to protect you when you need them and when you call on them, but not to overregulate you and to constantly burden you with taxes and things of that nature.
Important is accountability and transparency to you. Will the people, if you were elected county judge, will the people be able to get a hold of you, voice their concerns to you?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I do is I give my personal cell phone number out to everyone, because I think that if you're going to represent the people, you need to be able to be contacted by the people. And so if anybody would like that, I'll tell you right now, my personal cell phone number is 469-658-5011. I give that out to everybody. I've never had anyone significantly abuse that. I did have a person call me one time at 2 a.m. and tell me that there was a street light that was out. I waited a couple of days, got it fixed. I called them back at 3 a.m. and let them know it was fixed and asked them if they could go outside and check on it for me. But, I think that it's very, very important to be as transparent and also as accessible. That's why I have knocked on literally thousands and thousands of doors in this race, because I think that if you are going to represent the people, you have to get out and meet the people. And that's exactly what I did whenever I ran for mayor. And that's what I'm doing in this race as well. I'm going out and I'm meeting the people. Whenever it comes to transparency, I think that transparency is incredibly, incredibly important, which is why whenever I became mayor of the city of Ennis, the very first action that I took was I eliminated the briefing session, otherwise known as the meeting before the meeting. Prior to me serving as mayor, there was a briefing session that was technically a public meeting, but it was being held in a back room with kind of obscure signs to be able to tell people where to get to it. It was not filmed. It was not live streamed. And I made the change. I said, guys, we're not having this anymore. We're going to have one meeting. We're going to discuss everything in that meeting. We're going to film it and we're going to live stream it. And that was the second major change that we made as well. The meetings were being filmed prior to me serving as mayor, but they were not being live streamed. They had been back in the COVID era, and then that had went away. And whenever I came in as mayor, I said, guys, we have to make these meetings as accessible as possible. I know we're recording them already, but we need to start live streaming them again. And since then, we have live streamed every one of our meetings.
You talked about going door to door and meeting people and knocking on doors. That's important in a campaign. You got to knock on doors. So you're putting miles on those feet. You're going out there and you're knocking on doors. I want to know, what is your particular, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing Ellis County? And what are the people telling you is the most pressing issue facing Ellis County?
That's a really good question, TV. It really, it varies a lot, because the Ellis County as a whole differs a lot depending on where you are in the county. And there are different things that are important to people depending upon where they are. A majority of the people, I would say, of the doors that I knock on hold the same conservative values that I hold, but they do have different interests geographically based on where they are. Whenever I'm knocking on doors, in the northwest portion of the county, the number one thing that I'm hearing is growth and, transportation, having roads that are large enough to be able to handle the demand, and infrastructure that can handle the demand of all of the vehicles and all of the people that are coming into the county. Whenever I'm, in more of the north central portion of the county, I'm hearing about all of this large scale development that's taking place. And, what's happening to our small community that had more of a small town feel, and now we're seeing all this exponential growth. Whenever you get more down into the central southern portion of the county, you're hearing a lot of questions about these municipal utility districts that are coming into the county. There's tons and tons of these municipal utility districts that are coming into the county, and we've got farmers that are concerned. They're concerned about flooding. Is their family farm going to flood? When you get over to the east side of the county and you start talking to these residents, they're concerned about accessibility to water. If they want to, allow their kids to be able to build a home out on their family farm, are they even going to be able to get enough water to their family farm site so that they can build an additional home? So, a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing really revolve around the infrastructure in the county and the growth that we see coming into the county.
Yeah, and you know what? Growth is coming. How do we, and I'm going to get into MUDs and I'm going to get into infrastructure, but kind of how do we balance the growth with maintaining the rural character of this county? Because this is, it's a county, but it's starting to look more like city. There's like city problems affecting this county because we're growing so much. So tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's a balance. We have to ensure that we are preserving the heritage and the history and the small town feel of these farmlands, of these communities. But in the state of Texas, we also have to remember that there are private property rights. And if you are a farmer who, has a small homestead farm and you've got 10 acres or so, those private property rights are incredibly important to you because they allow you to do the things that you want to do on your property. The flip side of that coin is when we have a developer that comes in and buys 500 acres adjacent to the 10-acre small farm homestead, that developer that comes in and buys that acreage also has private property rights, and they have the ability to do on their property what they want to do. And so that's where we have to sit down with these developers and we have to talk to them and we have to come to agreements and we have to look at things and figure out, how do we preserve the heritage, the history of these areas? How do we protect the farmland that's currently there? And how do we also allow you to be able to exercise your private property rights as well as a property owner? And those can be very challenging. And that's where you get into a lot of these things like municipal utility districts or public improvement districts. There's a lot of tools that the county has at its hip that it can use to be able to discuss things and to be able to work with these developers to try to mitigate some of the issues that we see coming into the county.
These muds and pits have a lot of power because it's determined by the state. And so there's state decisions being made there, but there are things that the county can do, I imagine. Talk to me about, if you're elected judge, what would you like to see done with these muds and pits, and how will you communicate with your state representatives to try to rein it in or try to get a balance?
Right. So in order to solve these problems, a lot of the issues that we're seeing, it's going to take state level legislation to address these concerns. And as you well know, the geographical area that the county judge is elected, being the whole of Ellis County, is the same geographic area that the state representative is elected to represent as well. So we have to ensure that our county judge is going down and is an advocate for Ellis County. Whenever legislature is in session, the county judge needs to be down in Austin and advocating and speaking on behalf of the citizens of Ellis County, going and testifying at committee hearings and talking to these legislatures and explaining to them as a whole the issues that we are seeing here in Ellis County and proposing ways and requesting for reform in some of these areas. Because some of the things such as municipal utility districts, they can cause issues for our municipalities in Ellis County as well. But whenever you have a municipal utility district that comes into the county, they are essentially creating a city, and the only department that they are opening is the Public Works Department. And they are focusing primarily on sewage treatment. And whenever you have these batch sewage treatment plants that are coming in, there are wastewater plant operators that have to work there. It's already challenging enough for municipalities to find certified wastewater treatment plant and water treatment plant operators across the state of Texas. And now that you have all of these municipal utility districts, we've got over 20 of them in Ellis County right now, it can become very, very challenging for municipalities to be able to find those people because they're being pulled away into these municipal utility districts.
Yeah, that it is an issue. Now, as a judge, because of these developments and stuff, and I know it's a push and pull whenever you're dealing with developers. If you ask them for something, they're going to ask you for something. As county judge, what would you like to see developers do better when it comes to infrastructure? Because Ellis County is in charge of a lot of roads. There are a lot of state roads and stuff like that, but just Ellis County in general is in charge of a lot of roads, bridges, etc. So what would you want to require from these developers?
Well, I can tell you that number one, I think one of the most important things that we really need to do, and this is something that falls directly under the county judge's office, and that is with respect to emergency management, is that I really feel strongly that we do need to have a county-wide emergency alert system. When there are tornadoes that are coming through, or there are other types of catastrophic disasters that could be occurring, and we need to alert the citizens I think that we do need to have these alert sirens. We've seen how flooding, recently, and when you don't have adequate infrastructure for not just your water treatment, your wastewater treatment, and your roads, but that infrastructure, you can also have emergency infrastructure as well. And I think that that is a very, very small ask. And one of the things that we need to work with developers and say, you know what, if we're going to work with you, we're going to require that you need to install an emergency storm siren out at some of these developments, because we have to ensure that we're able to alert citizens across Ellis County in the event of some sort of a disaster.
You talked about emergency. One of the county judge, and there was no more evident than when COVID happened. The county judge gets approached, says, look, there's a virus going around. It's killing people. There might be thousands dead. You got to do something. There could be very real crisis. We live in Texas. There could be a big tornado. There could be a lot of things that happen. So talk to me about your, times you've had to deal with crisis and kind of talk on that.
Yeah, so that is one of the most challenging times, is whenever you're having to deal with a major crisis that is unfolding. As I told you at the beginning, I served for about 10 years as a volunteer fireman. I served as president of the Ellis County Firefighters Association. I've now served as the emergency management director for the city of Ennis for going on 2 years. And during that time, we have had to activate the Emergency Operations Center. And in situations like that, it is important that you have someone who is experienced, who has the connections, who has the training, and has the understanding of what you need to do, how you open and activate that EOC, who the state partners are that you need to notify, who the county partners are that you need to notify, and let them know that you've had some sort of a disaster that's happened. Maybe it's a large scale loss of water system, loss of water pressure within your water system. Maybe it's a massive fire and you're having to evacuate people. But having someone who has experience in those areas and understands who they need to contact, the role that they play in that position. And number one is learning to remain calm in those situations and to be able to understand the steps that you need to be able to take is vitally important. Every emergency, every disaster that happens, I can tell you I've responded on hundreds and hundreds of emergency calls in Eastern Ellis County throughout the years, and every single one of them is different. It is incredibly difficult to be able to plan for every possible scenario, but what you can do is you can be prepared as a county, such as by having systems in place to be able to citizens across the county when there is some sort of a disaster that strikes.
Speaking of emergency management, the Ellis County Sheriff and Brad Norman, and there is a lot that the sheriff has to cover now. There's a lot of, because of MUDs, PIDs, and some of that. Again, those rural areas are becoming more like cities, but it's still considered counties. So the sheriff is dealing with a lot of area, and they're dealing with a lot of issues that you would normally see in the city. As county judge, what would you do to support your sheriff's department? What would you like to see them get? Maybe a substation? Talk about that.
I think that it's incredibly important that we have to fully fund our sheriff's department. And it's not just our sheriff's department, it's our entire criminal justice system, because the criminal justice system and the public safety in Ellis County, it incorporates the entire spectrum. You have the sheriff's department who's going out and who's takes care of business out on the streets and who arrests these bad guys, but then they take them into the county jail. We have to also fully fund our county jail and make sure that our jailers have the resources that they need inside of the county jail to be able to deal with these dangerous inmates that we have at the county jail. We have to ensure that we are also fully funding our district attorney office, because they have to have the resources they need to be able to prosecute those who are suspected of committing a crime in Ellis County, so that we can keep our jails cleared out. And we also have to support our county courts at law, as well as our district court judges. We have our veterans court, and we have to support the entire criminal justice spectrum. And yes, I do believe that one of the things that we need to do as the county continues to grow is in line with the Ellis County 2050 plan that's already in place. Is there have already been substation locations all around the county that have been identified as being substations for the sheriff's office, being joint elections office and tax collections offices. As the county grows, we are going to have to be able to fund those capital expenditures to be able to build those new facilities across all of Ellis County.
Yeah. And the jail you did mention about the jail does house, it has seen an increase in mental health budget, because mental health is kind of weird here in Texas, and the infrastructure and of that, it becomes a law enforcement issue. A mental health crisis most of the time ends up being a law enforcement issue. So they end up dealing with that in the jail. But the jail is old, and the jail, so talk to me about, as county judge, what would be your plan on addressing the jail, maybe building a new one?
Yeah, so as county judge, the county judge's office serves as the chief budget officer for the county. You do have to work very closely with your county auditor's office, also with your county treasurer's office as a whole. But as the county judge reviews all of these plans that we have for the county, we also have to look at the revenue that we have coming into the county. And there's going to have to be some very, very difficult decisions that are made, likely in the near future, of how are we going to fund these new facilities. We have a lot of growth that's coming in. That is going to spur more property tax revenue for the county. A county and a municipality, the finances operate completely different. I've heard some say that the county judge is almost like the mayor of the county. Well, in some aspects that may be true, but the county governance and municipal governance are completely different. And it's important that we realize that those are different. One of the revenue sources of a municipality is property taxes, but you have tons of other revenue sources in a city or in a municipality. Whereas at the county, your primary revenue source is your property tax. So we will have to take a very close look at the property tax revenues that we have coming into the county and see how are we going to fund some of these long-term, large-scale capital expenditures. The issues we're having at the county, there's not a single issue within Ellis County that's going to become a smaller issue. As we continue to grow in population, every one of the issues that we currently have is going to become a larger and larger issue. So we're currently outgrowing the size of our jail. Now it's going to continue to happen.
Right. And I know, since we're talking about that, one of the biggest things that I've covered in these 5 years of covering candidates, every time the tax bill comes out, people are like, ouch, ouch, ouch. If they weren't paying attention before, all of a sudden they're paying attention when they get their tax, because it's rough. And I know the county is the smallest part of your tax bill to the schools and the cities, but it's still part of the tax bill. A lot of people say, hey, they want you to go no new revenue. They want you to cut. So tell me, how would you, as judge, and you got to work with the other commissioners, what is your mentality on taxes, and how will you approach taxing and budgeting in the county?
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about my past history and how I've approached it. So I can say that my first year as mayor of the city of Ennis, our city manager proposed a budget that was an incredibly inflated budget, in my opinion, and also proposed going with a voter approval rate, which essentially maxed out the property tax rate without going to the voters to approve. I proposed a separate budget and a separate property tax rate, which was actually just below the no new revenue rate. And we were able to continue to have all of the same services that we were provided that were essential to municipal governance. And we were able to approve a property tax rate that was actually slightly below the no new revenue rate. This past year, my second year as mayor, I did the same thing, and it was voted against. And as the mayor of the city, I voted against the property tax rate, and I voted against the budget as the lone no vote, because I did not want to vote to increase our property tax rate. It was a slight increase, but even with it being a slight increase, I did not believe that we needed to increase the property taxes, because I believe that we had other sources of revenue that we could have harnessed. And so, for instance, the city of Ennis, I found out that we had encumbered funds that were encumbered from previous budget years, but those funds were sitting in a non-interest bearing account. So say 2 years ago in a budget, we budgeted to purchase maybe a fire truck and some other equipment. We order that equipment, but it doesn't always show up that same budget year. So in this case, it shows up 2 years later. So you have these encumbered funds that are sitting in an account. And I find these funds and I say, guys, why are we just leaving these funds sitting in a non-interest bearing account? Why are we not investing these in something like TextPool, where we can have additional revenue through interest on these funds? And the city commission at the time decided, well, they agreed that was a good idea. We estimated that we were going to bring in approximately an additional $2 million in revenue per year by investing those funds. And they said, well, let's go ahead and invest those funds, but let's also increase the property tax rate to bring in an additional $400,000. And I said, guys, I'm not okay with that. We can't do that. We've identified a way to be able to address the shortfall that we were seeing, and we don't need to also increase property taxes on top of that. So that's a little bit about how I've addressed these issues in the past.
So you, as far as budget, do you look at these line items where you approach it like that, every line item, and verify that how will you deal with waste?
Yeah, so that's, as the chief budget officer for the county, that's one of the most important things that you have to do is you have to go through and you have to pick the budget part. And really it's everyone's responsibility. But most importantly, if you're serving as county judge, that is your responsibility. And you have to go in and you have to look and say, is this something that is essential to the core function of what we are supposed to be doing as a county? In my case, in the past, is this essential to the core function that we are supposed to be providing as a municipality? And if it's not, then we have to take a close look at those items and go, why are we doing this? If we are not required by the state to be able to do these things, then why are we doing this? Because this is causing an increased burden on the property tax payers.
Right. I could keep you on here all night because there's just so many issues that you could cover as running for such an important position. But, as I wrap up, why should the voters of Ellis County trust you? What sets you apart?
What sets me apart? Well, I think a lot of things set me apart. I can say that, number one, as you can probably see, I have the motivation and I have the drive to be able to take on challenges and to be able to adapt and to overcome challenges that are set before me. And, I really enjoy, having a challenging job. That is what you're taught in engineering school. You're taught a lot of theory about engineering, but number one, you're taught how to solve complex problems and how to find a solution to the problem that is set before you. And as a civil engineer, I've had a career that I've built out of solving complex problems, out of overseeing and putting together multi-million-dollar budgets for future projects, for future roadway projects. And I'm the only candidate who has that type of experience. And also the experience of serving as the chief elected official for a municipal government.
How can people, if they want to find out more about Kameron Raburn, where can they go?
So if you want to find out more about Kameron Raburn, you can go to VoteKameronRaburn.com. I wanted to simplify things for people because Kameron is spelt a little different. It's spelt with a K. Raburn is also spelt without a Y. So you can also go to VoteRaburn.com. Just remember there's no Y in Raburn.
Yeah, I know. I even messed that up when I was doing the title. I had to go ahead and correct that. I do apologize. But on my show, the candidate always gets the last word. So I'm going to be quiet and let you talk to the voters of Ellis.
Ellis County citizens, I would be just absolutely humbled to be able to serve as your next Ellis County judge and to be able to lead Ellis County into the future as we continue to grow. As your next Ellis County judge, I will stand strongly beside my conservative values to protect your individual freedoms and to be able to be the best county judge that I possibly can, and to be a steward of your tax dollars and work as hard as I possibly can to be able to reduce your property tax bills. I would be absolutely just completely humbled to be able to have your vote on March 3rd. Remember, early voting is February 17th.
Kameron, I do appreciate you coming on the show and answering these questions. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of your family, and I keep all the candidates in prayer every election season because I know this stuff ain't easy and it's hard on family. And you have a young family, I believe.
Yes, sir. Sir, no, that's the reason why I do all of this, is I want to ensure that Ellis County remains a conservative and safe county for my family to be able to grow up in. So I have three little girls. Currently, I've got a 6-year-old, I've got a 3-year-old, and I've got an 11-month-old. And, I want Ellis County to be a safe community for them to be able.
That's awesome. Now, there's one last question I forgot to ask you, but I can't close without asking you. One of the things that I'm involved with, and I was I pushed, and I love the people who really worked on this program. As a matter of fact, I'm a mentor, and I was on there on the court today. The Veterans Court. The Veterans Treatment Court has done a lot for a lot of veterans, and it's expanded with state grants to be able to help with the treatment services. And there's a lot of veterans who are completely changing their lives. They made a mistake, but they didn't lose their honor, and they need a chance for us to, look out for them. So maybe they could get this record expunged if they do the work. Is that something that you will continue supporting?
Absolutely. I think that it is incredibly important to support our law enforcement, our first responders, but also those who have went overseas, not even just those who have went overseas, but anyone who has served our country, to be able to support them and to be able to give back to them and give them the opportunity to re-enter our society as productive members of the society and have, a clean record, and to come back out and to rehabilitate themselves is incredibly important. Those guys go out, the men and women that go out and fight for our country to protect us and to preserve our freedoms and to be able to give us the ability to go out to vote and have the government that we have. I think it's incredibly important that we stand beside them and that we support them in every way that we can.
As a veteran, I truly appreciate that. I know my brothers and sisters in arms do too. Thank you so much. Can you stick around after the show real quick?
Yes, sir.